when the Templars became too powerful. They were not defeated on the battlefield. They were defeated in silence. By the early 14th century, the Knights Templar controlled vast lands, fleets of ships, and a financial network that stretched across Europe. Kings owed them money. Popes feared their independence. And France, drowning in debt, watched them grow stronger than crowns themselves. So Europe faced a choice. Allow the Templars to remain powerful, or erase them. On Friday the 13th, 1307, the decision was made. But here is the real question. Did the order truly fall that day? Or were they forced underground, into secrecy, becoming something else entirely? Because when an order becomes too powerful to control, it does not simply disappear. It adapts. It hides. Or it is hunted until nothing remains. And from that moment on, Europe was no longer hunting knights. It was hunting a shadow. They began as 9 poor knights, sworn to poverty, obedience, and silence. In 1119, the Knights Templar were given a single mission: protect pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. No one could have predicted what they would become. Within 2 centuries, the Templars transformed into the most powerful organization in medieval Europe. They owned vast tracts of land across France, England, Iberia, and the Holy Land. They controlled fortified castles, secret commanderies, and a fleet of ships that moved men, gold, and information across the Mediterranean. More importantly, they controlled money. The Templars created one of the earliest financial networks in history. A pilgrim could deposit gold in Paris and withdraw it safely in Acre. Kings borrowed from them. Nobles depended on them. Even the Church trusted them. The order answered only to the Pope, placing them beyond the authority of any crown. To monarchs already struggling with war, famine, and debt, this independence was not admirable, it was dangerous. By the early 14th century, France was nearly bankrupt. King Philip IV owed enormous sums to the Templars, yet he could not tax them, arrest them, or command them. They were soldiers, bankers, and administrators, a state within a state. Rumors followed their power, secret rites, hidden archives, forbidden knowledge brought back from the East. Most were likely exaggerations, but in an age ruled by fear and faith, rumors were weapons. And then there was the silence. No public displays of wealth. No explanations of their inner rituals. No transparency. When power grows without visibility, suspicion grows faster. The question was no longer whether the Templars were loyal, but whether any king could afford an order that powerful, that secretive, and that untouchable. Because history shows one rule without exception. When an institution becomes stronger than the crown eventually strikes first. King Philip IV of France did not fear the Templars because of their swords. He feared them because of his ledger. By the turn of the 14th century, France was collapsing under the weight of endless wars, administrative expansion, and a royal court that consumed gold faster than it could be minted. Philip had already expelled the Jews from France and seized their assets. He had crushed the Lombard bankers. Each move followed the same pattern: debt, accusation, confiscation. The Templars were next, but they were different. Unlike other creditors, they could not be intimidated easily. They were protected by papal decree. They answered only to Rome. Philip could not tax them. He could not legally seize their property. And worst of all, he owed them enormous sums. The French crown depended on Templar loans to function. A king in debt is a king at risk. Philip understood something crucial. To destroy the Templars, he would need the Church, or at least its silence. Years earlier, he had already tested his power against the papacy. His conflict with Pope Boniface VIII ended with humiliation for Rome and proved that a determined king could bend spiritual authority to political will. After Boniface's death, Philip ensured the election of a French pope, Clement V, a man cautious, indecisive, and vulnerable to pressure. At the same time, whispers began to circulate. Anonymous accusations. Testimonies from disgraced former members. Claims of heretical rituals, secret oaths, and blasphemous symbols. None were proven. None needed to be. In medieval Europe, suspicion alone could destroy reputations built over centuries. This was not a sudden decision. It was preparation. Legal frameworks were studied. Confessions were anticipated. Arrest orders were drafted in absolute secrecy. Even royal officials were kept unaware until the final moment. Philip was not preparing a trial. He was preparing an execution disguised as justice. Because if the Templars were guilty, the crown would be justified. And if they were innocent, their wealth would still solve France's problem. All that remained was the right moment. And it would come on a day carefully chosen to leave no room for escape. In the early hours of Friday, October 13, 1307, France awoke to an operation without precedent. At the same moment, in cities, villages, and isolated commanderies, sealed royal orders were opened. Their instructions were identical. Arrest every Knight Templar. Seize all property. Allow no resistance. No one was to be warned. The precision was terrifying. From Paris to the countryside, soldiers moved before sunrise. Templar doors were forced open. Knights were dragged from their beds, still wearing night garments beneath the red cross they would never remove again. There were no battles, no alarms, almost no escapes. The order that had defended Christendom for 2 centuries fell without drawing a sword. That silence raised an immediate question. Why did the Templars not resist? Some believed they trusted the law. Others suspected they underestimated the scale of the betrayal. But rumors quickly spread that the most valuable assets were already gone. When royal agents inventoried Templar houses, they found food, horses, documents, but not the vast treasure they expected. In Paris, the Temple fortress was searched thoroughly. Its vaults were not empty, but they were far from legendary. What disappeared was more troubling than gold. Archives were incomplete. Records were missing. Financial documents that should have detailed debts and holdings were gone. In La Rochelle, a major Templar port, later legends claimed ships had left under cover of darkness in the days before the arrests. No contemporary record confirms the escape, yet no inventory explains the absence either. By nightfall, hundreds of knights were imprisoned. The most powerful order in Europe had been neutralized in a single day. No warning, no defense, no explanation. This was not justice. It was containment. Because if the goal had been truth, the crown would have investigated. Instead, it acted as if the verdict was already written. And once the Templars were silenced, the second phase could begin, forcing them to speak. Once the Templars were imprisoned, the narrative changed. The arrests had been swift, but arrests alone were not enough. To justify the destruction of an order protected by the Church, guilt had to be manufactured. And in medieval Europe, there was a proven method for that: confession. The charges were severe. Knights were accused of denying Christ, spitting on the cross, engaging in obscene initiation rituals, and worshipping a mysterious idol. The accusations varied from region to region, often contradicting one another. What mattered was not consistency, it was compliance. Interrogations began immediately. Under royal authority, many Templars were subjected to extreme torture. Stretching racks, burning feet, starvation, and isolation were commonly used. Some prisoners broke within hours. Others held out for weeks. When pain became unbearable, confessions followed, not because they were true, but because survival demanded them. The results were predictable. Men confessed to crimes they did not understand. Others repeated accusations they had heard from interrogators. A few later retracted their statements, claiming they had spoken falsely to escape agony. These retractions were often punished with renewed torture or execution. The Church hesitated. Pope Clement V was uneasy with the process. He questioned the legality of royal interrogations and expressed doubt over the reliability of the confessions. But Philip applied relentless pressure. Public opinion had been poisoned. Once heresy was spoken aloud, doubt itself became dangerous. By 1308, the damage was done. The image of the Templars as corrupt and blasphemous had spread across Europe. Even where torture was less severe, the accusations lingered. Silence was taken as guilt. Resistance as defiance. Truth had become irrelevant. Because the trials were never about uncovering heresy. They were about creating a justification strong enough to dismantle an institution that had become inconvenient. And with confessions secured, the final question remained. What would become of everything the Templars had owned, and everything they had hidden? When the trials began, King Philip expected more than confessions. He expected payment. The destruction of the Templars was meant to solve France's financial crisis. Yet as royal officials catalogued seized properties, an uncomfortable reality emerged. The wealth of the order was far less than anticipated. Commanderies across France were searched meticulously. Gold, silver, and sacred relics were found, but not in quantities matching an organization accused of controlling Europe's finances. The legendary treasure was absent. What remained were operational funds, not vast hoards. This absence raised immediate suspicions. The Templars were bankers, not hoarders. Their wealth was mobile, dispersed across accounts, debts, and obligations. Much of it existed as records, ledgers detailing who owed what. Yet many of these documents were missing. Without them, debts vanished. Obligations dissolved. The financial power of the order evaporated overnight. In Paris, the temple fortress was stripped and sealed. Still, rumors persisted that its deepest chambers had been emptied long before the arrests. In La Rochelle, the order's most important Atlantic port, later stories spoke of ships departing just days before October 13th. Contemporary records remained silent, but silence itself became part of the mystery. Elsewhere, Templar properties were transferred not to the crown, but to rival orders. In theory, their assets passed to the Knights Hospitaller. In practice, years of legal confusion followed. Much was lost, misused, or quietly absorbed by local powers. The disappearance was not dramatic. It was administrative. Quiet. Permanent. No official inventory ever reconciled what the Templars were believed to possess with what was actually seized. And no investigation followed the missing records. Perhaps because asking where the wealth went would expose how little the trials had been about justice. What vanished was not just treasure, it was memory. Without archives, the order's inner workings dissolved into speculation. Facts blurred into legend. And into that void stepped theories of escape, survival, and transformation. Because when something powerful disappears without explanation, people assume it was never truly destroyed, only relocated. Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, was arrested in Paris alongside his brothers. He had come to France believing he would help defend the order against rumors. Instead, he walked directly into a trap. 4 years, he remained imprisoned, isolated from his fellow knights, watching the institution he led collapse piece by piece. Unlike many others, de Molay initially confessed under pressure. Like others, he later withdrew those confessions. In doing so, he crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. In medieval lore, a retracted confession was worse than silence. It challenged the authority of both crown and church. The trial dragged on for 7 years. By 1314, Philip IV had lost patience. The political usefulness of the Templars was over. Their reputation was destroyed. Their assets redistributed. All that remained was to close the chapter publicly, with fire. On March 18, 1314, Jacques de Molay was brought to an island in the Seine. Before the crowd, he was offered one final chance to confess. Instead, he declared the order innocent. He denounced the lies forced through torture. He called upon God to judge those responsible. He was burned alive that evening. Later chroniclers would claim that de Molay cursed King Philip and Pope Clement, summoning them before God within the year. History records that both men died soon after, Clement within weeks, Philip within months. Whether coincidence or legend, the story took hold quickly. Because people needed meaning. The execution did not bring closure. It intensified doubt. If the Grand Master died proclaiming innocence, what did that say about the trials? If the order was destroyed, why did its story refuse to end? De Molay's death marked the end of the Templars as a legal institution. But it also marked the beginning of something else, a legacy shaped not by documents, but by unanswered questions. And those questions would not stay buried. In 1312, under immense pressure from the French crown, Pope Clement V officially dissolved the Knights Templar. On parchment, the order was finished. Its name erased. Its symbols forbidden. Its members scattered. Yet history is rarely decided by decrees alone. Across Europe, former Templars did not simply vanish. Many were absorbed into other military orders. Others retired quietly to rural estates. In Portugal, the order was reborn under a new name, the Order of Christ, inheriting much of the Templars' infrastructure. In Scotland, where papal authority was weakened, enforcement of the ban was inconsistent. These were not acts of rebellion. They were acts of adaptation. What did not survive were the records. Without archives, without unified testimony, the inner life of the order dissolved into fragments. This vacuum allowed speculation to flourish. Symbols once practical became mysterious. Financial systems became legends. Silence became conspiracy. But the most important question is not whether the Templars survived as a secret order. It is whether they needed to. Their methods, international finance, coded communication, loyalty beyond borders, did not disappear with them. They became part of Europe itself. States adopted what once made kings afraid. Power learned from what it destroyed. The fall of the Templars was not the end of a heresy. It was the end of independence. Friday the 13th, 1307, did not mark the collapse of a secret cult. It marked the moment when centralized authority crushed an institution it could not control. And that is why the story endures. Because every time power grows beyond oversight, history asks the same question once again. Will it be allowed to exist? Or will it be erased, quietly, efficiently, and forever?